I want to make a short intro because I think you need to know our background and why we think that we need to talk about the headless stuff. Basically, decoupled is becoming more and more trending, right? These days, and we have 4 talks about decoupled just in Drupal camp. There are separate Drupal decoupled dev days. It's being a very trendy topic. We know there are companies who have already got into the decoupled stuff. I mean, a few years they used it, they developed it, and now people are giving up. So we really want to just talk about with like everybody. Don't want to be like 3 smartest people in the room talking about headless or not headless. If you have questions, interrupt, like join us. Let's talk all together, right? Let's do the introduction. My name is Evgeniy. I work at a company called System Seed, and we work with Decoupled for 3 years. So we've implemented already several big-ish production products on Decoupled. So I think we've got a good experience to talk about why headless and why not headless. And actually on this, today I'm going to defend the traditional Drupal and not the headless Drupal. Let's do the introduction. Go. You can go first.
Hi. Hello. My name is Ivan. Maybe we already have seen me on previous topic about GraphQL. You saw it. So should I protect?
No. Let's just talk about our experience first with the decoupled. Like who is doing what generally first, like the first introduction while we're doing this.
Okay. I have been working with Drupal about 10 years. Most I think traditional way when you have displays huge and templates are writing, overriding, something like that. So I'm not sure. Maybe I work also with Headless Drupal. I studied GraphQL. I studied React. I'm not sure, but
All right. The thing is, we don't have a plan. Like
Okay.
we have several talking points, and that's all we have. It's a complete improvisation.
All right. My name is Andrey. I'm a team lead at VIU. I'm also doing some freelance job. I've been also mostly working with Drupal in a traditional way. So end of last year, I started looking into Gatsby and static website generators. I've never used pure React together with Drupal, so only in combination with Gatsby. So far I like it pretty much. We implemented one project, which is still like in dev-acceptance phase. And I'm also busy with my own project, which I also use Gatsby for.
How many people here have got working real headless Drupal websites? Well, quite a few. Yeah. So let's talk about the first thing. Headless versus non-headless effort. How much time it takes to build a website in both?
It definitely needs much more effort than when you do it like first time. I would say your original estimation, if you would do it in traditional way in Drupal, you should multiply by 2. If you do it first time, yeah.
It's traditional multiplier.
Just join the conversation.
I know the way how usually React selling for customers. Usually people told something like, okay, we will build for you website, and then you can reuse the same components for mobile application. And I never seen that this way works. Because in most cases, developers have no experience for reusable components. It's take double.
Yeah, but it also depends on what kind of features do you want to implement in your application, because basically you can make an app out of your progressive web app, so you don't have to change anything. So if you want some extended feature, of course, you have to go to React Native or whatever.
If we start to talk about progressive web apps, I'm going to change the discussion right now in opposite way, really. Let's talk about effort, and then I will
All right.
add something.
Yeah, I think we have pretty big difference between front-end developers and usual. I mean, we need to build React application, but we have been working with Drupal many years, and if you will be working with React many years, I think this gap will be shrinking every time. Every new project will have less time. Every new component will need to less time. I mean,
Yeah,
gap will be shrinking around.
Yeah.
but so far, from our experience, the first project took twice longer than even expected originally with the learning curve. So we thought that we have all risks planned and predicted, and it took double of what we have planned. That's our experience, and we have
Four times.
Not the four times, but longer, much longer than expected. And this is a very underestimated thing, because you look like at the project, okay, Drupal is already there, just use JSON API, frontend, okay, we're gonna get it sorted out somehow. Fine, let's put some like 30-40% for learning curve, and that's it. No way.
Okay, so only one team works on both sides of Drupal?
In our case, yes, we have.
Yeah, for the first project, so that's fine, but you made several projects, right?
It's still bigger, not twice. It's still bigger in our case. I mean, then we would have
How much
done.
bigger, not twice.
Twice.
1.1.
Let's say truth twice.
10%. 8%.
It's getting more complex. The thing is, you have to support, I guess, team of multiple mixed skills developers first. So if you have developers working, I guess, on the same project on the front end and the back end, it's more time consuming to switch the context. You know, if you're working on the back end, that's one focus. On the front end, it's another one. But when you're switching between two parts, and they're totally different parts, like you're switching the mindset because you're changing the programming languages, which quite differentiate between each other. It's
Don't
getting.
you have two teams? One is focused on Drupal things, another one on application itself, React, or
And
whatever
then-
else you use.
You need one more team which will coordinate.
This time, yeah.
You have API, you have specification provided to UI team. That is.
We're not talking about my team specifically because we have historically full stack developers.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What about testing?
We're gonna get there. That's one of the points. So far, we're talking about efforts.
Okay.
From your experience, guys.
So if you're going to create mobile application, you should force your team members to learn another thing.
Pretty much.
Like iOS on Drupal. Oh, yeah.
We have a small team.
Okay.
Let's say, from my point of view, only one effort. It's your developers will learn something new.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point.
Yeah.
And that's also will make them like future-proof and more available on the market.
Is it good for developers or the company?
Well, for developers, I guess.
Make them
But maybe
something
both.
fun, as they say.
I think this is experience.
Could you have reduced your effort by bringing in somebody with different skill set, or is the Drupal experience still more important?
I would say that, well, basically from Drupal perspective, there's not that much to do. Basically, you just install your JSON API, and well, a solid part is already there. But the biggest part of the job you have to do on the front-end side, because now you don't have any Drupal templates and this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's all front-end.
So you don't need a developer with Drupal knowledge to do front-end part. Is that it?
Yep.
Yeah, but well, I think to architect even the front-end application, this might be a little bit hard for every
Drupal
front-end
developers
developer.
usually pretty expensive. So hire someone else.
Well, I haven't seen a project, in my experience at least, where we didn't need Drupal things to improve, to handle. Because even these days, I think decoupled Drupal still has many gaps to fulfill. Like really many gaps.
So then it's not decoupled
Well, it is decoupled,
some way.
but you need to do this workaround, you need to find this patch, you need to can apply something else, you need to normalize something because you need something custom that is not supported by JSON API, for example, thing. out of the box. So, well,
It should be a problem of a backend team.
it is. That's why we have backend team as well. We can't just say
It
let's.
shouldn't
the
care
default.
about front end at all.
That's, I mean, the team's thing.
My point is the front-end application also has to have some architecture. You know, it has to be
Yeah, but it's
well
separating.
sought after. You know, so you just have to have a person who is capable of doing this in terms of front-end application. And usually, well, back-end developers are pretty good at architecture and stuff. Well, usually.
Another thing is that you need to release separately things. So changes on front end depends on changes on back end. They are not stick together. And this is really managers releases becomes more difficult.
Yeah, so you should have think about not breaking UI. It seems like definitely, but in general they're separate things, so they can have each release cycle its own. I mean, independent.
So you need to manage API versions and
You can deploy API, and after that, front-end team can implement this API. I mean, you can start using this.
But it increases the efforts, right?
It's just API sitting in background and nobody uses it. Okay?
no,
That's how they said it in the beginning of the project, yeah? It's just the PI. What can go wrong?
you just changed the field names, and frontend is can handle that already. So yeah, you release new API, but some part of frontend already broken.
You
So
should use
you need
versions
to-
something similar.
Yeah, and managing versions is for me
Yeah, it's some kind
one
of
of the
pain, but it's-
difficult things. It's like managing content updates and database updates. It's one of the difficult things in development for me.
Just hooks in Drupal, it's easy. But they can run days, but it's just a hook.
So the big question, what for?
What for what?
We're talking about it's great efforts, double times, it's complicated. What for?
It's a really benefit.
In a few words.
In a few words.
I believe it's the next point, no?
It's modern.
That's right now.
Another point?
Just take it. Now the user experience, of course. So because for example, you don't have to wait for, well, in traditional Drupal, you submit your web form, for example, your page reloads, you get redirected to a thank you page, and it's completely different experience
You can
than.
submit it with Ajax and not get redirected.
Yeah, true, but the other things you probably cannot do like this.
I can give you another point.
Well-
Why too? We have websites below, right? Like this presentation was made on slides.com. When we need to draw a diagram, we use Draw.io. Probably you guys like Facebook or other applications. You know what's common there? It's not written on Drupal. And why? That's because of user experience, right? It couldn't get done on the slides.com on Drupal. That's why we're doing the front end. So when it comes to user interaction, that's not Drupal. It's from the user experience point of view. So these efforts are for user experience, mainly. There are some architectural things where you can, if you have split applications, like the case we were talking about with serving multiple websites, for example, yeah? One backend for multiple websites, it makes sense, probably double these efforts, because it serves the purpose.
And of course, you can also implement a nice user experience with Drupal. But then, how much effort will it take to customize it, right? So you can still write this pretty much the same JavaScript to handle all this user experience like React applications or Headless applications do. But it's all a matter of effort. So when you start with Drupal as a base, it's at the moment it's not coupled with React. So yeah, it's just a matter of effort, I
Do I
guess.
understand correct? Basically, the user experience is different in terms of performance. I mean, everything works more smoother, or
Pretty much.
Yeah.
what is the other benefit other than speed of that?
Well, I would say I pretty much like the idea that your web server is no longer busy with processing anything. So you just return your static, well, in case of Gatsby, for example, you just return your static assets, that's it. So you no longer connect to your database, get the data, it's all...
Tell us about the performance as well.
Yeah.
So, is there any other benefit than performance?
Yeah, I meant not like front-end perform, well, sort of. I mean,
the
time to first byte.
The end user experience in terms of performance and speed of that.
Yeah. As benefits, yeah, I don't know.
As a benefit, you may connect mobile application to that API. You have already built API for that.
Yeah, true. You can connect
So
multiple
the iOS
sources.
application using the same API
Well, generally, I have an idea why it's better, but I would like to hear from the people who actually work with it.
Two main
There's a lot
things.
of articles, but we want to short.
User experience and architectural opportunities. Let's put it down to two simple things.
So
Because
user
performance.
experience and the fact that you
Go
don't
for it.
develop-
Yeah, I have one story. I work on one site. It was Drupal 5, but it was very traditional. It was jQuery on the site. It was about music artists, labels, songs. You compile own playlist on the site. You have pop-up video on the site, and was jQuery. And my pain was that I worked on this site 2 years ago, and and it was 2 years, not two years ago, and it was pain because user experience in Drupal 5 sucks. even worse that S3 didn't exist when Drupal 5 was.
We are talking about development phase, and what do you think about efforts on maintenance and evolution level? What happens when you need to improve after release? Is it still double or it becomes less?
I think it depends on people who will do it, because if your programmer was quit from your project, it will pain for you, because traditional Drupal supposed to use Drupal way everywhere, but I don't think React have the same thing, because you have different extensions, different plugins, you can use different ways. So it depends on programmer, how your previous programmer worked on this project.
From one point of view, you have separate view layer, basically, which is outside of Drupal, which should make things easier to support because it's separate. Here's you get just the data from Drupal, and then you output in a different application. So from the spaghetti kind of code point of view, it's getting better, but that's two applications to support. So I think the efforts are still bigger, and from our experience, it's still bigger, even though it's easier to get a clue of where to fix a bug. It's more complex to make an architectural mistake or developer mistake. I mean, you can't do a PHP output in templates anymore. Well, with Drupal 8 you can do this as well, but
Does it mean that you need more high-skilled developers?
and this is a huge problem.
You can use Drupal 5 and that's no problem.
You can always fall back to
You
Drupal
can
5.
rewrite Drupal 5 at S3, rewrite image cache for use S3, so it's no problem actually. But it's PHP can do so much things.
But that's a good point.
Yeah, but another benefit is that you may use few APIs at the moment. For example, you can do request to so not using Drupal for Drupal different things, and you are just directly requesting things from the Elasticsearch. Or you may have another APIs already built, and so you are combining different backends in one place.
Okay, but you can do the same on Drupal side.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what would be easier. So to be fair, here probably using the coupled more efficiently.
Okay, let's say from security perspective, backend API calls will be more secure.
Well, it depends if you need to authorize your call, because well, for a search call, it doesn't need to be authorized, right?
I'm on your side, stop.
All right, so let's talk about user experience. Slightly touched this, but
Oh,
what are the thoughts?
Drupal user experience out of the box is disaster, I think. I don't know why we don't.
Miserable.
I don't know. Everyone, every Drupal version was disaster. At the start, and you know, CC or Bartik or even 7 theme, it looks like Drupal. You open site in 2005, 2010, 2015. This is the same.
Okay.
Did you try a different theme?
Idea.
But Drupal don't push you to download whole internet instead of React. Usually I see React applications more than 2 megabytes, closer to 5.
In the bundle size.
Yeah, just in one file, single file.
But that's the problem, that mostly developers do the headless Drupal coming from Drupal background, and they're not front-end developers. That's the biggest problem. They don't know how to do the front-end properly.
Yeah, and with Drupal also, for example, there is some guys say, okay, you shouldn't be using even jQuery, which is comes standard with Drupal. They say like, okay, you just write vanilla JavaScript. You can save on all the JavaScript, all the jQuery assets which are connected to when you use traditional Drupal. So it depends, I think.
No way React win here on this topic.
Well, you should be always thinking about your asset size. It doesn't matter if it's Drupal or
This is
React.
not about, I mean, this is just JavaScript, right?
So you're always sending a bunch of HTML that have a wrapper over wrapper over wrapper, but when you're using React applications, you don't do the things, and you are not sending all that HTML all the time.
Yeah, only 5 megs of JavaScript.
All right, shall we talk a bit more about the user experience stuff? Or it's clear that Drupal sucks by default?
It depends, really.
By default?
By default,
Doesn't.
sometimes Drupal really help.
But again, user experience, I think we have to touch the management part, because that part is definitely much more beneficial in a traditional Drupal, because you get to see your content right away. So you saved your node, it's updated, it's there. With React, so for example, you can use like contextual links on your page when you're logged in, and then you go directly to well, the edit mode of your page. Things like that, you know. So this is much more beneficial than headless approach.
And one more thing, what about screen readers? Do you guys support in your React application screen readers?
This is the thing of an effort. Everything like contextual links needs to be built. Screen readers needs to be built from the bottom up. Everything needs to be built from the bottom up, and that's the problem of doubling the effort or tripling the effort. Because in Drupal, there are many things out of the box. I mean, in terms of the accessibility. And I'm actually here right now protecting the traditional Drupal as well. And I'm saying that headless takes a lot of time. It's very trendy, and that's why we're having this panel talk. It's not, it doesn't mean that all your next project should be done in headless Drupal, because it will likely lead to some fuck-ups, to be honest. Like the first project will likely be the failure. Alright.
Yeah, I think.
Let's move somewhere else.
Oh,
Learning curve. How much time it does take to learn something new?
A lot.
A lot. And something completely new, like a Node.js world.
yeah, maybe I can start. I want to tell not my story. I'm going to tell the story of my wife. So she learned Drupal. I forced her to learn Drupal. I forced to learn Drupal many people. So I say look this video and help me with CSS, help me with templates, help me with styles, and etc. And maybe some JavaScript, include this jQuery plugin and some stuff, about Drupal. But one time she said, I tired of Drupal because it's pretty hard. Because if you need always to learn something, because Drupal is void of videos, void of lessons, void of documentation. You need to learn every day because you have layout builder, you have JSON API, you have some new features. I don't know what we have. We have media library, etc. So it's hard to say that it's not hard to start learn Drupal, and you will have some wow effect about you can do something really fast. You can do this really fast in React, I think, because I think traditional way is really here. Because it's slowly at the top of the Drupal. It's long way. It's hard. It will take so much time, but you will have. You will take your aim every time, like you go upstairs, step by step. You'll have wow effect. You will have some money from clients. I don't think React is so cool. So you need to break some many legs in React. I think going to upstairs.
Well, to be a good, what's the starting point? You know Drupal, right?
Maybe you don't.
Is that starting point?
We can talk about many starting points. For a new person to learn headless stuff like Drupal and front end takes a lot of time, right? If you know Drupal, it's up to you. Experience stuff.
I think it's both like React, for example, and Drupal has some learning curve, and I'm not sure what's like if from zero starting point what is actually shorter, because if you want to be a good Drupal developer, it's also takes some time. You have to know how the API works, you know how to core works, which kind of how to implement plugins again, so you have to learn that as well. So for me, it's like I'm not sure which one is bigger.
You have time to learn Drupal. It will easy just several years. JavaScript world change it each week, each day.
Yeah, true.
And how you can learn language where 1 + 1 can be 11? I know it's exception, but you should be ready. You should prepare for this exception. And again, we're talking about the good sites, good React applications can do only high-skilled developers.
Yeah, but good Drupal sites as well. They also have to be done.
You just can use views, and that's it. Enable caching and use Pantheon, and this will solve all your problem.
Okay, any other thoughts on the learning curve? Or shall we move on?
A question.
Sure.
As a Drupal developer, where should I invest my time? Into mastering my backend part, or it will be better and it will increase my market really more if I start learning the React front-end part?
My personal opinion, the second one is obviously.
Sorry?
My personal opinion that if you will know more languages, more tools, of course, it will increase the value. And again, like decoupled is getting very, very trending, and the JavaScript is already very trending, right? So of course, if there will be front-end developers, back-end experience, or the other way around, it will give you more value in the market.
My personal recommendation will be just learn algorithms, not language. Technology, algorithm, and something similar. Switch to another language, it's easy.
I don't think so. I have been working with Drupal 10 years from university. I don't think it's easy to switch from Drupal.
I mean,
Because Drupal is fine job. We're working, but building sign in Drupal it's cool. It's not hard to do if you learn so much stuff, and then older you getting you older, then you easier to do your job. And I think learning curve in one point it's like exponential. I think it's go really hard to go there, and after some time it's like a plain line, and it's like cardio scheme.
So, next topic, hosting. That was the first issue we met. Before we were hosting on Pantheon, like Drupal websites, and then we had to think where to go, like, because we need to place, it's easier to develop when their applications are coupled together, like, I mean, coupled in terms of like one repo deploys to one hosting. It's just easier to support generally. And the first thing we had to face is that we need to trial new hostings, we need to do something to host Node.js application, which does the right thing, and the Drupal as well. So that was the first challenge, because you need to find somebody, a hosting provider you can trust, or build your own, which is a more complex thing.
I think you should definitely outsource. You shouldn't be doing the React application hosting yourself, because if there's a company that does it professionally for you, right? They also provide a pretty reliable service. Well, personally, I like Netlify for static websites.
Would you repeat which one?
Netlify. But that keeps your Drupal application and front-end application in separate places.
Yeah.
Which works for multiple different teams. For example, our workflow, every new user story is a new branch. When we deploy something, the applications need to know each other's URLs and work together, and that introduces some DevOps issues, in our case at least.
Well, yeah, you definitely have to somehow synchronize at least the pushing moment when you push your feature to both environments. They have to be at the same time, basically.
Can't control when the application will roll into each hosting. When the deployment is done on PHP and when it's done on PHP application deployment is done, and when the front-end application deployment is done, it can be happening at the different time. So we can't really sync that, because when it's rolled.
Why do you need to sync it?
Huh? I mean, okay, think about the case when there is something changed on the back end, and on the front end has to reflect that. You deploy the app, backend application deployed first, and now you front end. You can break front end easily.
Yeah, but
very easily.
it's
That's,
not hosting
You
issue.
do something wrong.
It's the
I can-
DevOps issue.
I can give you an example, JSON API. Imagine you've added a field or removed a field, and JSON API has been requesting for this field. It will fail. The front end page will fail.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can implement some fallbacks. So, like, implement some backwards compatibility from your front-end side, right? So deploy that first, so it doesn't break anything when you deploy your backend changes.
So basically, you have to write much more code because you can't synchronize the deployments. And that's again the efforts thing where it gets more complex. If it were, that's why I said like it's easier to do when it's deploying to one hosting provider, because the deployment happens at the same time. Like all the changes, boom, front end and back end at the
So
same
don't
time.
get the idea why new field breaks front-end application.
Do you want to talk about that?
Because you're not
Removing can break.
Changing type.
can break,
Yeah.
yes.
was
It's
really
like
human.
changing database schema.
In the front end,
Yeah,
request
cool.
the new
It's
field,
not a
which is not in the
solution.
back end yet, so you can
Uh,
break the
no.
request.
It's relies on some schema, so it's expected.
So if you're going to remove field from you decoupled solution, you have to remove it from front-end part first, and then you have to remove it from backend.
But what for users? If you remove it from end, they cannot use alt.
Because you're going to remove it anyway, so what's the problem?
And
Yeah,
the
but
complexity-
otherwise, you can, okay, then let's add field.
Okay, great.
So then release first backend, then frontend.
Yeah.
So and all the time you need, but you can in one in one release remove field and add field.
Yes.
So how can we deal with that? As I see it, the only thing is API versioning. So you're requesting API version 1.1, so you know the schema. And then when you are releasing front end, it's just know that okay, I'm able to work with API version 1.1, but not able to work with 1.2, and it's request 1.1 API.
But the Drupal doesn't support versioning. That's the problem. So you can't do this in Drupal with any existing solution.
Yeah.
So you can't do that in
cheapish
Drupal.
ways, yeah.
Well, very dirty ways, very dirty ways. So you can't really do that.
Yeah.
One more surprise. Usually front-end applications distributed through CDN, and CDN caches this front-end application. You have to support several versions of your API. Just keep it online.
Yeah, so it gets more complex, like again, because of the hosting, because if you don't control everything at the same time, it introduces a whole bunch of new problems actually.
Can you use content to CMS? It will be
But that's still like just the backend.
content. It's not hard to do, I think, to change
Yeah,
it.
but where to host this, and how to deploy this, and how to make the deployments, how to synchronize changes between the applications. In traditional Drupal, things were much simpler, right? You just deploy it.
If
indeed.
you don't have tens of miles of record and you are changing the schema. So that's pretty same issue, and yeah, it always depends on the situation.
I think modern CI for usual traditional Drupal is also pretty hard to do. I think you have Drupal CI, you have GitLab CI, and you need to have many tests. I think you need to cover. You've got some tests.
We're gonna get to
Sometimes.
the test coverage.
For Drupal, yeah. But I think it can be also hard to push some data. You need to work with configs. You need to prepare hook update n for some things. It can be hard to do, and you can't revert back if you will have a mistake. But in
5 minutes.
But in React, I think you can.
Let's see. Oh, we have. Okay, let's see what we have. Let's choose the topic to talk about. Development opportunities, performance, estimates, progressive DevOps and offline first, test coverage. That's what we've got. Any thoughts? What to talk about?
Maybe tests.
Huh?
Maybe tests.
Tests? The first voice was tests. So let's talk about tests.
Well, in my opinion, it's definitely easier to do with traditional Drupal.
But no
Well,
one.
but basically,
No one.
yeah, well,
Right tests.
We do.
it's because you're sort of, well, in a headless approach, you also have to cover your front-end application with tests. So basically, it sort of doubles the work. So you have to cover the backend part and you have to cover the front-end part as well. So it's both, and you also, in terms of like your team skill set, you have to know how both solution works, like React testing and traditional Drupal testing.
Yeah, but you have web tests, you have unit tests, so
And the effort doubles because you have to cover the tests backend application and do the same for the front-end application.
You have to
Yeah.
test for front end and traditional Drupal.
yeah, in any case you need to do that as well.
That's the thing, that it's more complex in the decouple Drupal because you're covering tests, two applications you have to cover with tests, right?
If
Not one.
you use TDD, for example, for development, it's not a problem to you.
But that's more tests to write. It's more frameworks to support. You cannot do behead or conception tests on the
It's
front
headless,
end.
leaf is it.
Yeah,
And also you need integration test between two applications.
and the API test as well. So it's not just double, double and a bit more.
Double plus one.
Yeah.
Sorry, one question.
Sure.
I still don't get why doubles, because currently we have AK automation team which writes tests using Selenium, and they don't really care what's behind the web application.
That's because you're doing end-to-end testing. Like, look at the browser stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But what about writing the component level tests on the front end? What about writing the functional or unit tests for the Drupal code and functions? If you're talking about end-to-end, it doesn't matter. Really doesn't. If you're talking about more in-depth testing for larger applications generally, if you're talking about like almost Google scale or
We still have our unit tests. What else we need?
unit tests for what you have.
For backend part.
And what about the front end? What if one of the your components will break? Do you test these
That's
integration
what
tests?
Integration or end-to-end testing is for.
Not necessarily. You might miss a case. I mean, the end-to-end test, which is cool, we can cover the most valuable user journeys, right? The most business critical part of your website. But you can't test every little bit. And again, if you're talking about testing, this this pyramid of testing, if you the bigger your application gets, the more end-to-end tests you might have, and it will take more and more time because the end-to-end tests are the most time-consuming test type, right? Because it's browser, allows the page, allows all the JavaScript and stuff, page transition. If you're talking about large applications, they even can't afford to have lots of end-to-end tests.
Run it daily.
Huh?
Run it daily.
I know teams who it takes 24 hours to deploy something because 24 hours they're running tests before they deploy. That's a real story. Large teams like I don't want to mention Juna because it might be a different team, but like large-ish companies are doing this and they have lots of tests, and they have teams of testers who are actually doing unit tests and function tests and end-to-end tests as well, and it still takes a day to run all the tests before they deploy. Anything else, or how much time have you got left? Nothing. Well, I guess that's it. I don't know which way won, like traditional headless. Not headless, but the sound of it. Thank you guys.